So we're going to do a little update here on the LT4 builds. Here's Dana Dan. Call him Dana Dan because he's been putting these Dana 80s and 60s in these JKs. So here's one LT4 build that we're progressing on. This is a stock LT4 with an 8L90, and we've mounted a power steering pump over here using a custom bracket, and we're using a custom pulley, 8-rib, to drive the power steering pump. We're running a completely factory stock harness off of a Cadillac CTS V 8-speed. And if we look at the fuel system, one, you'll notice that we have a low pressure fuel sensor. The LT and the LT4s obviously have multiple fuel sensors, high pressure and low pressure. And you've got these connectors here for injectors. The LT5 even adds some port fuel injectors to the direct injectors. But if you come back here, we are running the stock fuel pump control module, which basically makes the fuel pump variable speed for pressure. It can run up to 70 psi, where the JK runs at about 60. We took the LT4 pump and we installed it into the stock sending unit. It took a little bit of thinking to get that done properly, but this way we have the stock sending unit, and we're going to be using the Jeep fuel pump connector, interfacing that with the GM harness, which again uses the fuel pump control module, and that way we'll have full computer controlled fuel pressure, not only for the low pressure but the high pressure, obviously, because there's a high pressure pump in here. Something interesting on the LT4, you'll notice that you have a baro or a map sensor back here, and then you have another one up here. So it looks like they're reading intake manifold pressure / vacuum both before and after the blower. Some other things to note on this LT4, we are running the catch can with direct injection. You want to keep the crankcase as clean as possible to keep that carbon off the back side of the valve, and I think GM has done a pretty good job at that. We're also going to run the computer controlled wastegate. We're not going to run it pure vacuum like some of the aftermarket setups. In addition, if you look over here, this is our intercooler. We're going to run that off the computer also, so it's not running all the time, it's running as intended. We did use weld-in mounts on this vehicle because this was an earlier LS3 build that we had done, and it used the weld-on mounts. But in another build we have going, which I'll show you in a minute, we're going to be using bolt-in mounts. Now, if you're going to be running this kind of horsepower, guys, you got to run some upgraded axles. I'm not sure what he's running here. He's got some Dynatracs. He's on 40s. This is a new 8L90 GM Performance transmission, which should be up to the LT4. This is an older Atlas II that he had in the vehicle, and we updated the input to the 8L90. You notice that all we're really doing is running a spacer and a clocking ring, and this is the stock four-wheel drive adapter. That is actually a wet adapter, so there's a seal in here, and you can't just remove that like you can with a 6L80. We are going to be running multiple transmission coolers in this build so that we keep this transmission cool. And we are going to run an engine oil cooler, and that's going to come off down here, and it's going to go to a aluminum fin cooler. Here's another LT4 build in the works. You'll notice that this has the stock engine mounts. We're going to basically use our easy mounts in this. We've shown that they can handle the horsepower. He does have metal cloak suspension, which I've actually used in some of the earlier Supercharged builds with the Gen 4s, and it holds up well with these Duraflex joints. He's got a new Dynatrac D60 in the front and a Dana 80 in the rear, and these are pretty beefy. We actually went with the 72-inch wide axles because if you look at the body on this one, he's got a lot of top end weight, and we wanted to keep it stable and roll. So this is a pretty beefy axle, and this should hold up to the LT4. This bumper's not too bad. You'll notice that the winch is sunk. We do have an LED bar up here, which probably won't be a problem. We are going to be running a Camaro SS fan, so this thing should stay pretty cool. We are going to run auxiliary coolers both in the transmission and the engine oil. These are 6-pack shocks, which most of you know. They're nitrogen filled and double-ended for more travel, so we should have plenty of articulation on this build. Looking at the rear, I think you can see how beefy this updated Dana 80 is. It's pretty massive. And we've got our metal cloak evap relocation kit. So again, we're going to work the LT4 pump into this with a fuel pump control module, keep all the emissions active. We're not going to delete any of that stuff. Again, we're going to use full wastegate and intercooler pump control. We're going to try to run everything that we can right through the original operating system as GM intended it. So I hope to have the body on the other build here within a week, and we'll come back with some follow-ups.